Hi everyone, thanks for joining me again to learn more about how to use Rhino 3D to create three-dimensional forms that may be suitable for Carnival. We're going to start by opening up the software. It's a new file, large objects in centimetres. Double click on the front viewport so that we have a large space to work from. And then we're going to import a sketch that I created beforehand that simply shows a drawing of a carnival mask that will allow us to learn how to draw in vectors in three-dimensional space and apply surfaces. I figured by importing a background bitmap or JPEG, we would then be able to work in the same way that you guys would probably work. I know a lot of you have already said that you work with sketches before you think about how to do technical drawings. So we're going to try and mirror that in a digital way. In order to get our JPEG or bitmap into the Rhino software, we need to type in the command in the white bar, background bitmap. It then asks you to select the image file. So for me, I've got a sketch saved on my desktop, and as I said, it's very simple, and it isn't symmetrical in any way. The next part of the exercise, we're literally just going to work with line drawings or vectors to create one half of the mask as an outline from the front view. From there, we can then manipulate it in three-dimensional space and apply surfaces to create a very fluid organic form. So to begin, we're going to use some of the pictorial tools over here on the left-hand side. We're going to start with drawing a simple straight line using the polyline tool, which is this one here. If you click and hold, you'll get a sub-menu, and we want to use the first option, which is a single line. I'm going to click at the top of the beak, and then because I don't have any snaps on, I'm going to hold down Shift to straighten the line. You can hear me pressing Shift there. Alternatively, you can select Ortho, and that will keep it nice and straight. And then stop somewhere near the bottom of the sketch, the beak. The next step is to add the outline for the outside of the beak, and for this I need a curved line, so I'm going to select the next tool along. There are several options when creating curves, many of which will require experimentation. For now, I'm going to use the second one along, which is curve interpolate points. The reason for this is because the points sit on the lines themselves, so it gives you more control. If you have your end snap on, as we learnt in the last exercise, that will allow you to snap to the end of lines or objects. It will automatically snap to the bottom of the straight line that you drew for the end of the beak. And then you can literally click several times on the shape of the beak until you reach the top, and then right click to finish. And you should end up with two lines, a straight one that is separate to the main one. The first thing we're going to learn how to do is to join lines together. So I'm going to join this curved line to this straight line, and I can do that by holding down Shift and selecting both lines, or by holding down Shift and drawing a box over both. Once I have them both selected, in the white box at the top, I can type in the command join. And you'll see that it tells me two curves are joined into one closed curve, which means that I can eventually then apply surfaces to this at a later point. In order to know where my centre line is, I am now going to draw another line, again from the bottom of the beak, and again holding down Shift, straight up to the top of the mask. And this is literally just a construction or reference line for me to work from. To change the colour of the line, I can go up to this icon here for object properties and change the display colour from black to a colour of my liking, just to indicate that that's a construction line rather than a drawn line. From here, I can draw the eyes and some of the other sections that I need to make my object come to life. I'm just going to continue with the curve tool that we used before. I'll zoom in, do the eyes first, making sure that it's not connecting to the objects that I've already drawn. I'm just going to do it on one side for now. Same with the face. With near snap on, I can connect to the edge of the beak and follow around the template to the top of the ear. I'm going to ignore the feather for now because I'll come back to that at a later stage. And you can change the shape as you see fit and end up on the centre line in the middle. So that's my face shape. Then again, from the near snap, so the edge of the face shape, the first layer of feathers, and again feel free to change the shapes to something that suits. And again just one side, and then the final outer edge, and I am just changing the shapes as I go along here. I can always adjust them at a later stage if I feel a need. Make fewer where I need to. So I now have outer feather, middle feather, inner face on one side, plus an eye, then mirror over. So to mirror these objects, we type in the command mirror and press enter. Start of the mirror plane is at the top of the centre line. Bottom of the mirror plane is anywhere else on that centre line. And you'll see now that we have all of the items mirrored on both sides of the centre line. I'm going to change this now to blue so I don't get confused with the origin line. So again, back into properties, change from red to blue. Now that we have most of our outlines drawn on one side, we're going to think about mirroring those so that we have a complete drawing. We're not going to worry about this feather section at the moment, or this headband section. We'll add those later. To get started, let's zoom out so that we can see everything. Let's hold down Shift and select all of the drawings on the right hand side of the blue centre line. If you manage to select the blue centre line too, don't worry, deselect it, hold down Control or Command on the computer and just click on the line and that will deselect it. Our next command then is to mirror. So let's type that into the command bar. It asks where should be the start of the mirror plane. I'm going to start at the bottom. Where is the end of the mirror plane? Right at the top, again making sure you've got your snaps on. Once you click, you should see that you have mirrored copies of everything you've drawn before. So everything's nice and symmetrical. Once you've got all those together, let's hold down Shift, grab all of the lines, and let's move them out separately to the right hand side. See what we have to work with. Right click with the mouse and drag across. Again, you can keep moving your object by dragging it over to the right if you don't want to see the template behind. At this point, I think we can delete our blue centre line. So we just click on it and hit delete on the keyboard. And then what we now want to do is join up our mirrored sections. So we want to join this side with this side for the back part of the feathered section. So we hold down Shift to select them both and type in join and press enter. And you'll see again, it should say two curves joined into one closed curve. Let's zoom in. I do have one problem with what we've just created. in that the center one, where it's joined, has a pointy end, see here, where the others are all quite curved. All I'm going to do to correct that is select the point that is protruding and simply delete it, and that will round off that curved section. If I'm not happy with the fact that that's shorter than the others, I can hold down Shift, grab the two handles and pull them up to the height I prefer. We're now going to use the join command for all of the mirrored sections to get them all to work as counterparts. So the next stage now is to think about how we make this three-dimensional. I'm going to right click on 4 viewports. If I tumble by right clicking and dragging in perspective, you can see that all my lines are on one plane, which we can see in the front view. From the side, they're on a flat plane, and at the top, they're on a flat plane too. So if we look in perspective, the side view is like this, top view is like this. What we need to do now is add in our round headband, which these lines will curve around so we can make them 3D. So working in the top view only, and we'll add that circle in using the circle line tool, the second one in circle diameter. And now we're going to guesstimate this size, and then we'll scale the whole object later. If I right click on 4 viewports, you can see that that's approximately how I think the head band will work with the flat sections of the mask. I need to make sure that's centered. So now from this, I need the flat lines of the mask to wrap around the circular headband. But before I do that, I'm going to extrude the circle out to create the headband. So I select the circle, type in the command extrude. Now you see there are several options that come up, all of which will need more experimentation. For this particular command, we're going to use extrude CRV, which is short for curve. So extrude curve, press enter. Extrusion distance. Now you can specify what the height will be. And again, because we started in centimetres, it will also be in centimetres. But for the purposes of this, I'm just going to make a guesstimation. I think it's going to sit above the eyes and be about that deep. So there is my headband that the user will wear for the mask to be wrapped around. The mask itself, I need to select all of. Before I do that, I'm going to get rid of the template completely, the background bitmap. To get rid of it, I type in background bitmap in the same way as I did when I placed it in the file originally. And this time I'm going to select remove, and it's gone away from you. That just cleans my screen up a little bit. You can press escape to get out of the background bitmap command. Then in the right view, I'm going to press shift and drag a box around all of the lines that make up the front of my mask, so they're all highlighted in yellow. And then we'll go with the bend command. The bend command allows us to bend the object around the headband. So let's work in the top view only and type in the command bend. It asks where is the start of the spine. It asks where is the start of the spine. Well, this will be in the middle, the flat face of the mask, where it connects with the circle. Then it asks where is the end of the spine, which will be at the end, the top view of the flat planes of our mask. In other words, where the yellow line ends to the right. I need to make sure in my menu that we have no on copy, so it doesn't make a duplicate. We don't want it to be rigid because it will be kind of stiff. We do want a limit to the spine. We don't need to click on angle. We do want it to be symmetric so it happens both sides, and we do want to preserve the structure. So we'll try and make it fit that curve as best as we can see, and click. If I right click out, we can see what's happened there. So if I double click on perspective and tumble around, you can see that my lines have wrapped around the headband. And this gives me a nice starting point from which to make the next part of the 3D form. So my next step is to start to create surfaces onto these lines that have been bent. I'm going to do that using the circle 3-point tool. So working first of all with the outer feather section, so this section here, I'm going to take the circle 3-point tool, and with near snap on, I'm going to connect this far point here with this far point there, then take near snap off and make sure that the curve at the bottom follows the main curves in the rest of the model. If I look in perspective, I can see how that connects. So you can see that it's connecting here. And also here. I'm going to take the two outer lines, this one and this one, and I'm going to split those by the circle. So you'll see that those lines are now split into two, the point where the circle intersects. And I'm going to split the circle by these two and delete this part here. So what I've now done is shown Rhino what the cross-section curve would be like for that surface. What that does is gives me a nice clean straight line for the bottom edge of that section. So in order to use that as the bottom edge, I'm going to take the two outer edges and split them by typing in the command split by the cutting object, which is the bottom edge I've just created, and press enter. This now means I can delete these two curvy bottom sections and I can join and I can now start to create a surface from the lines that are left, which is in the surface menu over here. It's the 1/3 from the left. I'm going to select the left outer edge, the blue middle line, the right outer edge and the bottom curve, and press enter. Okay, and that gives me a surface for the feathered section at the back. I'm going to put my viewport into technical mode, and that will allow me to see the lines of the other surfaces I want to create. The next one that I'm going to create is the middle set of feathers. And I'm going to do this in a similar way as I did before, using the circle 3-point tool, connecting two ends of the second set of feathers. And then before I click for the third specification, I'm going to right click on 4 viewports and then double click on the top view to get it in line with the headband. If I come out of that, I can see how that sits. This is the line I've just created. I now want to split that by this line here and this line here. So type in split. The cutting objects is this one, and this one. Press enter, and you should see that this part of the circle is now separate to this part of the circle, which we can delete. So now I'm looking to create a surface using these curves, separate to the one behind. So I'm going to just zoom in and make sure that these points are connected. Zoom back out a touch. I'm also going to make sure that this point that I've just connected has a line that connects it to the curved line that I created last. So I'm going to select mid snap, and it should auto snap to the middle of that line. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of relevance. This bottom one needs to be split by the vertical line I just put in, and that then gives me 1, 2, 3 lines that I want to work with for the first surface. So going over to the surface menu, I select surface from 2, 3 or 4 edge curves, 1, 2, 3, and press enter. And that gives me a surface that I can work from, and we'll differentiate that from the previous in a second. Firstly, we need to mirror that over to the other side, the mirror command. And join the two together. Then I'm going to rotate that one forward in the right view and tilt this one backwards. It really helps you to see how the construction will come together. Once you've got those into a position that you're comfortable with, the next step is to get the face to a surface. So similarly as before, we're going to want to create a surface around a curved network of other curves. So we're going to have to be quite strategic in how we do that. I don't think I need this center line anymore, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm looking at what I have here. I think I'm going to need a center line actually from the last dot that we have there down to the top of the beak and see where that gets us. We're going to want to explode this first. 2 segments. Let's make sure that our lines are connecting. So pulling this away, and then with near snap selected, nothing else, making sure it's connected. And the same with the line we've just created up here. Let's get a bit closer, zoom right in on that. Let's make sure both of those in snap are connected to the original. Then we should be able to split this by this line here. And then we have 1, 2, 3 curves of significance. And with these, in the surface menu, we should be able to use the patch tool. Press OK. And that should create a nice surface for us for that part. From this, we can now cut out the eye by taking the eye curve that we have on the surface and typing the command extrude. When we type this, we choose the first option, extrude CRV, which is short for curve. it asks us which direction we want to go in. Now currently it's trying to go vertically, which is not going to work for us because we want it to intersect the surface it sits on horizontally. So we need to click in the menu up here on direction. Then go into all 4 viewports, and in the top view we can indicate what that looks like so that the computer knows how we're trying to intersect the surface. So I pulled out a little on either side of the surface I want to cut. I'm going to select that surface now and type in split. So thinking of this like a cookie cutter and dough, this is the cutting object. Press enter, and it should have split the surface into 2 pieces. So we'll delete the inside eye, which we don't want, and we'll delete the cookie cutter. And now we have the eye hole for our mask. Rather than repeat all those commands, we can now simply select that and mirror it to the other side. Now for the final part of our mask making exercise, we're going to deal with the beak. This is where we'll see it come to life. In the previous exercise, we split the beak up into sections, so we're going to work with this to create 1/2 of our 3-dimensional beak. And we're going to move the points around in free space. So we'll put our end snap on, zoom in a little, take this point here and snap it to the corner of our mask. We're going to delete any rogue ones that are spoiling our shape, and then come out of this viewport and into the 4 viewports. In the front viewport, I want you to delete the centre line and the part that's showing to the left, which was our old template. We're just going to work with what's on the right hand side here and this line in the centre that we have remaining. So let's look at the front viewport in more detail. Let's take the top of that line and make sure that it aligns with the centre. Once you're happy that it all looks straight and attached to the main mask, let's go into the right viewport and select all of the points except the 2 that are attached to the mask, so leaving these ones unselected. Let's start to move them and drag them about in the profile view. We can deselect them 2 at a time by pressing Control. Or 1 at a time if we prefer, until we think we're getting close to the shape that we want. We can look in the 4 viewports, and particularly the perspective view, to see how that starts to make shape. Check it out also how it appears from the front as well as the side. Make any modifications as you need. Then once you're happy with the shape, we'll look to make it surfaced. Back to the surface menu, let's go for surface from 2, 3 or 4 edge curves. 1, 2, 3 and press enter. And you should get a nice clean surface. Have a look at that in the other views. If you're happy, we'll look to mirror it over. So there you have it, how to create three-dimensional forms using vectors and surfaces in Rhino 3D.